I'm Kai Chen, and this is the story of how blood became poison in a boardroom built on betrayal. They say money changes people, but I learned something darker. Money reveals who people really were all along. And sometimes, the people you die for are the ones sharpening the knife for your back. Our family's empire started as a joke. Dad's cramped electronics repair shop in a dying strip mall in downtown Seattle, where broken phones went to find second chances. My sister Zoe was the golden child, Harvard MBA. Magazine covers. The works. Dad's eyes lit up like Christmas morning whenever she walked into a room. Me, I was the shadow. The one hunched over circuit boards at 3 in the morning. Fingers stained with solder. Chasing something everyone else thought was impossible. While Zoe conquered Wall Street boardrooms in Manhattan, I was hacking together code in that dusty back room, surrounded by the smell of burnt electronics and broken dreams. My professors at Seattle Community College thought I was wasting my life. You're brilliant, Kai, they'd say. Why settle for this? But I saw something they didn't. In every broken device, in every frustrated customer, there was a gap, a need, a chance to build something that mattered. The breakthrough came during my final semester. 12 years ago, I'd been working on inventory management software. Nothing sexy. Nothing that would make headlines. Just clean. Brutal efficiency, wrapped in elegant code. When local businesses started throwing money at us for licenses, Dad's dismissive shrugs turned into something resembling pride. Maybe my quiet son isn't so useless after all, he said. And for one perfect moment, I thought I'd finally found my place in his world. I should have known better. Over the next 7 years, I poured everything into transforming our little repair shop. While Zoe collected accolades at her Manhattan consulting firm, I was building something real. Our shop evolved into Chen Dynamics, a software company that corporations across the Pacific Northwest couldn't ignore. My mother would find me passed out at my desk, code still glowing on multiple monitors. You're killing yourself for this, Kai, she'd whisper, draping a blanket over my shoulders. There's more to life than proving yourself. But I couldn't stop. Every line of code, every satisfied client, every revenue spike was another step closer to earning the respect I'd been chasing my entire life. 5 years ago, when we hit our first million in annual revenue, everything changed. Suddenly, Zoe was very interested in the family business again. She quit her 6-figure consulting job in New York and came home to Seattle with a smile that made my stomach twist into knots. It's time for real leadership, she announced over dinner, her voice carrying that familiar note of condescension wrapped in silk. With my experience, we can take this company to places Kai could never imagine. Dad practically glowed. Finally, some professional expertise at the helm. I sat there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, watching my life's work get handed over like a birthday present. The company I'd built from literal trash was suddenly Zoe's inheritance. She was named co-CEO the next week. What I didn't know was that Dad had been quietly restructuring ownership without telling me. In his excitement over Zoe's return, he'd convinced me to sign what I thought were routine operational documents. Hidden in that paperwork was a stock redistribution. Dad retained 45%, but gave Zoe 30%, leaving me with only 25%. The irony was delicious in its cruelty. While I continued developing the products that generated our revenue, Zoe became our public face. She gave TED Talks about innovation she'd never touched, accepted awards for breakthroughs she couldn't even pronounce, and slowly, methodically began erasing me from the company's origin story. Our revenue exploded to 50 million over the next 3 years. But so did the suffocating realization that I was being edited out of my own creation. Zoe started holding board meetings with Dad and their newly appointed outside directors, business school cronies, who knew nothing about our industry but everything about corporate politics. They made decisions about my software, brought in Zoe's MBA buddies to optimize systems they didn't understand. Each executive order felt like another nail in my coffin. But I wasn't sitting idle. While they played boardroom games, I was playing a longer game entirely. 2 years ago, I'd quietly established Nexus Technologies LLC as my personal consulting company. Every major software innovation I developed afterward was technically created as a contractor for Chen Dynamics, not as an employee. The intellectual property rights were carefully structured to remain with Nexus Technologies, with Chen Dynamics holding only licensing agreements. I made sure every client contract included personal service clauses tied directly to my involvement. I cultivated relationships, solved their problems personally, and made myself indispensable to their operations. What looked like dedication to Chen Dynamics was actually building my own fortress. Then came Dad's 60th birthday party, the night my sister finally showed her true colors. Zoe had rented the ballroom at the Meridian Grand in downtown Seattle, transforming what should have been a family celebration into a corporate networking circus. 300 of the city's most influential power players, all gathered to witness what they thought would be another boring family milestone. I arrived in my standard black suit, only to catch Zoe's withering glare. "Seriously, you couldn't even try to look successful," she hissed. "These people judge everything." Kai. The evening unfolded with painful predictability. Zoe worked the room like a political candidate, her laugh perfectly calibrated for each audience. I found myself doing what I always did, ensuring things ran smoothly while everyone else took credit. After dinner, Zoe clinked her champagne glass, calling for attention. As we celebrate Dad's milestone, she began, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "It's time to announce some important changes at Chen Dynamics." My blood turned to ice. "The board has voted unanimously," she continued, her eyes finding mine across the room, "for streamlined leadership moving forward." I knew this was coming. The board meetings I'd been excluded from, the hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Too long. We've been held back by outdated thinking and resistance to change. Her smile was razor sharp. "That's why." Effective immediately. "I'm assuming the role of sole CEO." The words hit like a physical blow. Around me, 300 faces watched my public execution with the fascination of spectators at a car crash. "Some people," Zoe added, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "are better suited for technical roles than actual leadership. My brother Kai has done admirable work maintaining our legacy systems. But in today's rapidly evolving market, we need vision. We need excellence." She paused, letting her next words sink in like poison. "And frankly, Kai, you're just not equipped for this level of business. Your community college education and narrow technical focus have become limitations we can no longer accommodate." The silence was deafening. I felt every eye in the room dissecting me, seeing exactly what Zoe wanted them to see, a small man in over his head, finally being put in his proper place. But as I stood up, my chair scraping against the marble floor, I wasn't thinking about humiliation. I was thinking about the emails queued in my drafts folder, ready to send with a single click. I walked over to Dad's table, placed his wrapped gift in front of him, and said simply, "Happy birthday, Dad. Enjoy your celebration." Then I left, my footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Knowing that tomorrow would bring a reckoning, none of them saw coming. Because while Zoe was busy playing politics and collecting awards, I'd been doing something far more important. I'd been building an exit strategy. The next morning, I arrived at our headquarters in the South Lake Union District before dawn, watching the sunrise paint the Seattle skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. At exactly 9 a.m., Zoe swept through the entrance with Dad, both wearing expressions of triumphant satisfaction. Zoe's voice mixed surprise with irritation. "What are you doing here? I assumed you'd have the dignity to stay away after last night's transition." I smiled, pulling out my tablet. "Just handling some final business matters." "Zoe, but since you're both here, we should discuss the immediate future of Chen Dynamics." "There's nothing to discuss," Dad interjected, his voice firm with newfound authority. "The board has spoken. Zoe is now the sole CEO." I interrupted, tapping my tablet. The main conference room screen flickered to life, displaying a legal document. "Yes, I heard. Congratulations. But there are some operational details we need to address immediately." I expanded the image, making sure they could read every word. "You see, while you were busy planning corporate coups, I was ensuring business continuity There are some contractual obligations that require immediate attention. Click. The screen filled with licensing agreements and intellectual property documents. The core software systems that generate 80% of our revenue. The inventory management suite. The client portal. The analytics platform are all proprietary technologies owned by Nexus Technologies LLC. My independent consulting company. Chen Dynamics operates under licensing agreements that include specific performance and leadership continuity clauses. The color began draining from their faces, per the terms I established when I developed these systems as a contractor rather than an employee. Any change in my role or status triggers an automatic review period. The board's decision to remove me from operational oversight constitutes a material breach of our service agreements. Zoe's perfectly manicured fingers gripped the conference table's edge. That's impossible, she whispered. You developed those systems while working for the company. While working as a contractor for the company. I corrected, opening another document. Here are the consulting agreements I've been operating under for the past 2 years. Every innovation, every upgrade, every critical system component was developed by Nexus Technologies and licensed to Chen Dynamics. Click. A cascade of client contracts appeared on screen. And here's where it gets interesting. Our major clients didn't just sign with Chen Dynamics, they signed for my personal involvement in their projects. 87% of our revenue comes from contracts that include personal service clauses tied directly to my continued participation. Dad collapsed into a chair, understanding, flooding his features. The contracts I signed last month, he muttered. The ones you said were routine renewals. Were actually termination notices with 60-day grace periods. I finished. I gave you 2 months to reconsider your management decisions. Last night's public humiliation was your answer. Zoe's composure finally cracked. You manipulative bastard. You've been planning this coup for years. I've been protecting my work for years. I replied calmly. You wanted to play hardball corporate politics. Welcome to the major leagues. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Here's what happens next. As of this morning, Nexus Technologies is exercising its right to terminate all licensing agreements with Chen Dynamics. Our clients are being notified that their service contracts will transfer directly to my new company, effective in 30 days. I clicked to the final slide, a spreadsheet showing revenue projections. Without my software and client relationships, Chen Dynamics retains approximately 8% of its current revenue stream. The rest comes with me. Dad's face had aged a decade in 10 minutes. There has to be another option, he said weakly. There is, I said, my voice softening slightly. You both step down immediately. I acquire controlling interest in Chen Dynamics at fair market value, which, given the circumstances, has dropped considerably. You retain your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends but having no operational authority. I paused, looking at my sister. Zoe gets a generous severance package and sterling recommendations for her next position, preferably somewhere far from Seattle. Zoe's face cycled through shades of red I didn't know existed. You're destroying everything Dad built. I'm saving what I built. I corrected. Dad created a repair shop. I created a technology company. The only thing being destroyed here is your delusion that you could waltz in and take credit for my life's work. My phone buzzed with the first client confirmation. Microsoft's subsidiary had just agreed to transfer their contract directly to Nexus Technologies. Time's running out, I said, showing them the message. What's your decision? The next several hours were a blur of lawyers, emergency board meetings, and corporate restructuring. By evening, I sat alone in what was now truly my office, looking out over Elliott Bay as the Seattle skyline glowed in the sunset. The company I'd built was finally, completely under my control. But the victory felt complex, triumphant, yet tinged with the melancholy of broken family bonds. That evening, Mom came to see me, her eyes red with exhaustion and grief. Did it really have to end this way? She asked softly. I met her chaza, my voice gentle but unwavering. They forced this choice. Mom, Zoe and Dad would have pushed me out entirely, taking everything I'd built and leaving me with nothing. She nodded slowly, understanding the business reality, even as her heart broke over the family fracture. What happens now? I turned my laptop toward her, showing the expansion plans. I'd been developing new product lines, international markets, innovations. I'd kept hidden while Zoe played CEO. Now, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. I build something even bigger. But this time, I'm doing it without people who see me as expendable. Under my sole leadership, Chen Dynamics has grown into a Pacific Northwest tech powerhouse worth over 300 million. We've expanded internationally, acquired 2 competitors, and become the industry standard for mid-market business software solutions. Zoe found work at a fintech startup in Austin, taking a significant step down from her CEO aspirations, but hopefully gaining some humility in the process. Dad retired quietly to a cabin on Whidbey Island, finally understanding that his golden child had nearly destroyed everything he'd worked to build. We see each other at holidays now, awkward family dinners, where we discuss the weather and carefully avoid mentioning business. The wounds are healing slowly, though some scars will remain forever. Sometimes, late at night, in my corner office, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. But then I remember that night at the Meridian Grand, the contempt in Zoe's voice, Dad's approving nod as she publicly gutted me, and I remind myself that respect isn't inherited. It's earned through competence and defended through preparation. They learned that lesson too late. My story has become legend in Seattle's tech community. A cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms from Bellevue to Redmond. I catch fragments at industry events. That's Kai Chen, the one who, they never finish the sentence. They don't need to. Last month, I received an invitation to speak at the University of Washington Business School's graduation ceremony. The topic, strategic thinking and long-term planning in family business. I accepted with a slight smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell about the importance of protecting your intellectual property and never underestimating the quiet ones in the room. The company continues to thrive. But more importantly, I've found peace with my choices. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply being so well prepared that betrayal becomes impossible. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so successful that their treachery becomes irrelevant. As I sit here watching the ferries cross Puget Sound, I remember something Mom once told me: success is the best revenge. But wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start building something beautiful. She was right. I've moved beyond revenge now. These days, I'm focused on creating something that will outlast petty jealousies and family drama, a company that succeeds on merit, innovation, and respect for the people who actually do the work. I still have that wrapped birthday present. I never gave Dad a photo album chronicling our company's journey from that cramped repair shop to the tech empire. It's become, maybe someday, when enough time has passed, I'll finally give it to him. For now, it sits on my shelf next to my awards for innovation and entrepreneurship. A quiet reminder that our greatest strengths often grow in the shadows where others refuse to look. Story 2. I heard my family arranging for me to watch The Children of the Guests a week prior to Christmas. I therefore modified my plans. "Where are you?" Mom asked over the phone on December 24. I chuckled and told her not to wait for me in the catering. My name is Margot, and I am 32 years old. I have made a good living as an event planner, planning flawless parties for other people while making sure my family's Christmas celebrations are perfect every year. This year, I was especially excited until I unintentionally overheard my mother and siblings planning to assign me to watch 5 kids without my consent. It was a painful betrayal. But rather than confronting them, I chose a better solution because family is complicated. I am the middle child in a family of 3 siblings. And while we seem close-knit on the outside, the kind that gets together for Sunday dinners and never skips a birthday, there is a dynamic that took me years to realize. Mine is undoubtedly an island. There is my perpetually single daughter, Margot, who always steps up for family gatherings. My younger brother, Thomas, has 3 children with his wife, Penny, including 9-year-old Sophie and the younger ones, 5-year-old Emma and 3-year-old Lucas, and my older sister, Abigail, is the perfectionist with twin boys, 7-year-old terrors named Jackson and James. whom she somehow feels are angels incarnate. Dad was always my advocate, the one who noticed when people offered my time without asking. And without him, the balance shifted. My role as family coordinator wasn't something I chose, but it came naturally from my organizational skills. My mother, Linda, was widowed 5 years ago when my father died of a sudden heart attack, and she has come to rely on me more than I sometimes think is fair. In the meantime, I built my event planning business from the ground up, starting with small birthday parties and working my way up to corporate events and weddings that now command premium prices. I began small, helping with Thanksgiving dinner, timing, when Mom seemed overwhelmed after Dad died. And then it was Easter, then Christmas, until somehow every family gathering became my responsibility to plan, execute, and often finance. Last summer, Abigail called the day before her anniversary, panicking that her dinner reservation had fallen through, asking if I could find them something, and if I could watch the twins while they went out. I canceled my own plans and called 3 restaurant owners who owed me favors, but my calendar stays booked months in advance. Something my family conveniently forgets when they call with last-minute requests. I arranged a private rooftop dinner for Abigail and her husband by 9 that evening, while I kept an eye on the twins, who wouldn't go to sleep until their parents came back at midnight. 2 months prior, Thomas texted for urgent assistance with a school project for Sophie, saying, "Need dinosaur diorama by tomorrow morning. Could you possibly assist? You are far more skilled at crafting than I am." As we all know, my mother depends on me above all else. I was her first call when the pipe burst under her kitchen sink. I spent 4 hours guiding her through the basic functions of her new smartphone. And I handled the insurance claim after the neighbor's tree fell in her garage because the paperwork overwhelmed her. I stayed up until 20 inches the morning, creating a prehistoric landscape that won Sophie and applause. I took on this role without protesting for years because, well, family helps family. However, last spring, I met Jason at a charity gala that I was organizing. He was the photographer hired to take pictures of the event. And between his camera clicks and my clipboard checks, we found a connection that felt natural. I was excited about dating for the first time in years. When I talked about family responsibilities, Jason listened without passing judgment, but asked thoughtful questions that got me thinking about whether the balance was fair. He understood my busy schedule because his job required similar demands, and he valued my organizational abilities rather than taking advantage of them. During our Thanksgiving dinner, I hinted that I might bring someone special this year, and everyone nodded distractedly as they concentrated on the food I had prepared. This year, as Christmas drew near, I felt a new excitement. Jason and I had been dating for 8 months, and I wanted him to join our family celebration. In early November, I started preparing for Christmas by ordering specialty ingredients and making personalized ornaments for each member of the family by hand. I paid for the premium ham from the butcher, who only offers 20% each season, with my own money. And I made custom coloring books with illustrations of our family traditions as a gift for everyone. This year would be different because I planned to introduce Jason to our traditions. I spent weekends decorating my mother's house with fresh garlands and arrangements, climbing the tall ladder to place every light, just so while she supervised from below with a cup of hot chocolate. My dining room became Christmas headquarters, with lists, schedules, and shopping bags arranged by recipient. I pictured us eating dinner together. His presence, a silent declaration about my future. I wanted my family to see me as more than just their dependable servant, as the woman who had started a business, found love, and still made time for her family. When I drove to my mother's house early for our pre-Christmas planning session, the morning began like any other December day, with frost on my car windows and holiday music on the radio. And I thought they would greet him with the same warmth I had always shown their partners. I had no idea how wrong I was until that fateful day 1 week before Christmas. The house appeared serene from the outside, with the lights I had strung along the eaves sparkling happily against the gray winter sky. I let myself in with my key and called out a hello that went unanswered, assuming they were in the back of the house. While carrying bags of new decorations and my trusty planning binder, I put my bags down in the foyer and went to the kitchen, where I heard voices coming down the corridor. As I got closer, I recognized my mother's laugh, Abigail's unique tone, and Thomas's deeper voice. I was about to turn the corner into the kitchen when I saw my name and stopped. My sister was talking, so we agreed. My hand froze on the wall, wondering what she was talking about. This was the first time I had heard of a separate adult dinner. And in our family, Christmas had always been spent with everyone gathered around the big table. Then Margot will watch all the kids during the adult dinner. 5 kids is a lot, but she always looks after the twins. So adding 3 more should be okay. Well, I think it makes sense. My mother said, Margot gets along well with the kids, so the table will be a flurry of activity. Furthermore, she has already scheduled all of those events. We were all supposed to participate in those activities after supper. Instead of providing babysitting entertainment, I had designed Christmas scavenger hunts and craft projects that adults could assist with. Thomas added his voice. We can finally eat dinner together after she and the kids finish their meal early. I hardly got to taste the food. Margot had spent the entire day preparing last year because Lucas had that meltdown. I couldn't express myself, so I kept listening while feeling constricted in my chest. And she'll also take care of the cleanup. Correct. I was thinking we could open a nice bottle of wine this year without worrying about driving. Abigail continued. Because she always does. I don't mean to offend her, but being single during the holidays means that she has the time to assist, perhaps even play some adult games after dinner. My mother chuckled. I had specifically mentioned taking Jason to Christmas this year. Had they simply not listened? Or worse, had they heard, but dismissed it entirely? Has she mentioned that photographer guy lately? Thomas asked. I thought that fizzled out months ago. Oh, that was never serious. My mother dismissed. Margot is too focused on work for relationships to last. We all have partners and kids to think about. The words hurt like a physical slap. We had broken up amicably, and Jason was still very much involved in my life, as they would know if they ever inquired about my personal life. Remember that accountant from a few years ago? The same thing. Now, my relationship history was being examined in my absence with utterly false information. The accountant had relocated across the nation for a job opportunity. Well, it works out perfectly for us, Abigail added. And she will handle the Santa duties too. Right? Thomas asked, wrapping the last of the gifts and placing them under the tree after the children had gone to bed. She can entertain the kids from 4:00 onwards. I will tell the twins to save their new toy demonstrations for Aunt Margot. And the Christmas breakfast the following morning. Remember how she made those snowman pancakes last year? The kids loved those. My mother confirmed. Of course. Margot always does that. I stood motionless in the hallway, my mind racing to list all the presumptions being made about my time. It is really convenient having an event planner in the family. Abigail laughed. Free childcare and catering all in one. Their laughter reverberated in my ears as I quietly retreated from the kitchen doorway. No one had ever asked if I was willing to take on these roles, nor had they ever taken into account the possibility that I might have my own plans or desires for the holiday. The drive home went by, and a blur of windscreen wipers kept pace with my racing thoughts. And tears threatened, but did not fall. As anger started to replace the initial shock, I carefully and silently gathered my bags from the entryway and slipped out the front door without making a sound. And they never even knew I had been there. They saw me as the handy single woman who had nothing better to do than cater to their needs because I had spent years going above and beyond to create the ideal family moments. The first thing that came to mind as I pulled into my driveway was to just cancel Christmas completely. The idea of the confrontation, the defensive reactions, and the inevitable label of being labeled oversensitive made me hesitate. I sank onto my couch as I looked at the Christmas command center I had set up in my dining room, complete with personalized gifts wrapped in handmade bows, recipe cards arranged by preparation, time, and hours of work, as well as the thousands of dollars already spent on making their holiday special. I could have claimed a work emergency, or even just told them the truth about what I had overheard. The pattern, the birthdays when I offered to babysit, the family vacations where I somehow always ended up watching the kids at the hotel pool while everyone else went on excursions, the innumerable times I rearranged my schedule, because Margot is so flexible with her time, became painfully evident as the weight of years of similar treatment suddenly crystallized in my mind. As this realization dawned on me, I knew something had to change. That night, I sat in my darkened living room, surrounded by the soft glow of Christmas lights, nursing a glass of wine and going through my feelings. I was not seen as having a life of equal value to theirs. My time was regarded as communal property, available for their convenience. My phone buzzed periodically with texts from my mother, asking where I had disappeared to, but I couldn't bring myself to reply just yet. I thought about my options, and the most direct approach seemed to be confrontation. Anger gave way to hurt, then to resignation, and back to anger in a tiring cycle. I could call a family meeting, explain what I had heard, and tell them how I felt about being taken for granted. But I knew from experience that would result in Abigail getting defensive and saying I was overreacting, Thomas looking uncomfortable and saying little, my mother crying and reminding me how hard the holidays had been since Dad died, which would effectively shift the conversation away from my worries and towards her grief, and just accepting the role they had given me. The third option was to completely withdraw. I could cancel Christmas and claim illness or a work emergency and avoid the whole situation. But that felt like running away, and it would only delay the inevitable confrontation about family expectations. I could swallow my disappointment, cancel my plans with Jason, and fulfill their expectations. My best friend, Sophia, who had known me since college and knew my family dynamic better than anyone, called to check in after I recounted what I had overheard, without even asking you. And she said, they did what she exclaimed after I recounted what I had overheard. 30. My phone rang with her familiar tone. It is blatantly disrespectful. Margot. Her affirmation made me feel less uncomfortable. I understand. But this is the way it always is. They think I will take care of everything because I always have. Sophia clarified that it isn't because you are their personal assistant, but rather because you are capable and giving l'âme d'esterde. What does Jason think of all this? I haven't told him yet. I acknowledged that before spending Christmas Day with my family, we had planned to spend Christmas Eve together. But I'm not sure what to do now. What would you like to do? As I pondered what I really wanted, Sophia's question lingered in the air, her characteristic directness piercing my confusion. I want to be valued. I finally said, I want them to understand that my time and effort matter, that I want to spend Christmas with people who see me as a whole person, not just a convenient resource. I was thinking about what would honor my own needs and boundaries, not what would cause the least amount of conflict or what would satisfy my family's expectations. What if I simply wasn't there? You mean cancel completely? No. I mean, what if I made up a new Christmas for myself this year? What if I went somewhere else, somewhere amazing? I could almost hear Sophia's smile over the phone. It began as a tiny spark of possibility that grew with every second. After all, I was a professional event planner, specializing in creating experiences and resolving logistical challenges. I had contacts at venues all over the country and abroad as an event planner. And as we spoke, the plan began to take shape. Now that sounds more like the Margot I know. What are you thinking? I recalled a client mentioning a last-minute cancellation at a luxury resort in the Caribbean. No cooking. No cleaning. No wrapping presents at midnight. Do it? Sophia urged. Book it tomorrow. You deserve a break. I could be on a beach on Christmas Day with a few phone calls. I am thinking that the picture is getting more and more appealing by the second. The resort my client had mentioned was in fact available. As their premium oceanfront suite had been canceled, the cost was high. But I had been saving for a kitchen renovation that could wait. This was an investment in something more significant. My self-respect. I ended the call with Sophia, opened my laptop, and started looking into my options. As my excitement grew, I booked the suite for 5 nights beginning on Christmas Eve. Entering my credit card details made me feel lighter, like I was finally putting my own happiness first. But what about Jason? Would he think I was fleeing a family dispute? Would he be sad that I wouldn't be seeing my family? There was only one way to find out. So I called him late at night. I took a deep breath, explained what had happened, from the overheard conversation to my rash resort booking. And he responded that he was still at a photo shoot. Margot. Perfect timing. I just finished up here. Everything okay? You never call this late. He responded immediately and enthusiastically, saying, Are you kidding? That sounds amazing. And for what it's worth, what they planned to do was not okay. You deserve better treatment than that. His support strengthened my resolve. And I told him, I know it's last minute, but would you want to come with me? I wanted to spend Christmas on the beach instead of with my family drama. He said, a little bewildered, I still want to handle the catering arrangements for my family. That is very generous of you considering everything. Well, I said, smiling broadly, I have something very specific in mind. What can I do for you? Margot emergency client situation. Actually, Anthony, this is a personal request. I need a special Christmas dinner delivered to my mother's house, but with some very specific parameters. The following morning, I called Dukas, the upscale catering company I often worked with for corporate events. Anthony, the owner, was shocked to hear from me so close to Christmas. Anthony assured me that there would be no issue if we delivered everything at 4:00 on Christmas Day. We talked about my requirements, which included a sophisticated adult dinner with wine pairings for 5 adults and a separate kid-friendly meal that was clearly labeled for children under 10. I also requested that all dishes be fully prepared, requiring little heating and detailed instructions that even a novice cook could follow. Will you be there to accept it? No, I said with a shiver of satisfaction. I'll be out of town. They'll have to do it themselves for once. My plan was coming together, with the catering planned and the vacation reserved. For the next few days, I kept up the appearance that everything was going as planned. And when my mother called to ask why I hadn't been at our planning session, I made up a story about an emergency with a client's holiday party. I would give my family exactly what they wanted for Christmas without my intervention, but on terms they never expected. Sometimes the best gift is the chance to appreciate what you have taken for granted. She took this without question, which is just another example of how my family both took advantage of and disregarded my work. While you are still in charge of shopping for Christmas dinner. Right, I gave Abigail your number to call regarding the twins' food allergies, as they have suddenly stopped eating anything that contains red food coloring. Actually, I said with a sprinkling of enthusiasm, I have planned something special this year. Everything will be delivered ready to serve, thanks to Dukas's professional catering. My mother was surprised to see that everything was prepared. But you always prepare Christmas dinner because it's customary. I explained that this would make things easier for everyone and give them more time to enjoy the holiday rather than spending it in the kitchen. Well, if you think that is best, you always know how to make things special. Margot, that obstacle was overcome, and I proceeded to the next part of my plan to get back the heirlooms and personal decorations I had left at my mother's house over the years. I visited the next afternoon under the guise of checking the catering menu. And while my mother was on the phone with a neighbor, I stealthily gathered the antique serving dishes I inherited from my father's mother, the stockings I had embroidered with the names of all the family members, and the sentimental items that I had treasured, but that somehow had become communal property in the family collection. Over the course of the week, family members contacted me with their customary requests and presumptions, and these treasures had slowly moved to my mother's house, where we always celebrated holidays. But this year, they would either travel with me or stay safely in my home. It was a small act of reclamation, but it felt important. My mother left a voicemail asking if I could come early on Christmas Eve to help her rearrange the furniture for best flow. Abigail texted to let me know that the twins now wanted to do a Christmas pageant and would need costumes. And Thomas called to ask if I could pick up last-minute gifts for his kids because I was so good at that kind of thing. In response to each request, I said something like, I'll see what I can do. My schedule is pretty packed this year. Little doubts would grow into realizations when they found out I wasn't there. In the meantime, I got ready for my vacation by buying a new swimsuit and resort wear that didn't belong in my typical December wardrobe. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to leave my family without presents. So I wrapped the gifts I had already purchased for them and had couriers deliver them on Christmas morning. A card with a personal message that alluded to my desire for a more balanced relationship going forward was included in each package. Jason and I made our travel arrangements, securing an early flight on Christmas Eve, and his growing excitement about our impromptu vacation including activities and restaurant research at our destination, confirmed my choice to put this new relationship ahead of unappreciated and unreturned family responsibilities. In order to finalize the catering arrangements, I met with Anthony from Dukas on Thursday, 3 days prior to Christmas. We sat in his office and went over the menu while his staff prepared holiday orders in the busy kitchen beyond the glass partition. Anthony checked his notes to make sure. I nodded. And you have the delivery address and time, 4:00 on Christmas Day? Then we have the kids' meal with chicken tenders, mac and cheese, steamed broccoli, and Christmas cookies, all labeled and with heating instructions. The adult dinner is beef Wellington, roasted winter, vegetables, truffle mashed potatoes, and chocolate hazelnut torte for dessert. Wine pairings included. I must admit that it is unusual for you to not be present yourself because you are usually very involved in family gatherings. I grinned and said, this year, I am trying something different, letting go of control a little bit. I did not mention that I was paying a premium for the Christmas Day delivery, nearly double the usual rate, but it would be worth it to see their faces when the catering arrived with me. I reached into my bag and added, can you make sure this note is included with the delivery? It's important that it arrives with the food. Anthony accepted the sealed envelope containing my mother's name in my neat handwriting. No problem at all. Anything else I should know? Just that payment has been handled in full, including gratuity for the delivery staff. That night, I went to what would be my last family dinner before Christmas, and my mother had invited everyone for a casual meal of takeaway pizza, which was a far cry from the elaborate holiday feast that was usually expected of me. They will only need to sign. Abigail talked about plans for Christmas Eve, which apparently included me overseeing a gingerbread house competition for the kids. And Thomas handed me his youngest without asking. When the child got fussy, I observed the subtle ways my family still took my gifts for granted as we sat around the table. Not a single person inquired about my plans or preferences, or noticed my unusual quietness, or the way I sidestepped questions about Christmas Day logistics. And my mother said she had told the neighbors that I would be happy to walk their dog while they visited relatives on the opposite side of town. They were so used to my accommodations that they failed to notice the changes already underway. I loved my family dearly, but I knew that patterns set over years would not be altered without a major upheaval. And sometimes love meant putting people in uncomfortable situations that eventually led to growth. I felt a mix of sadness and resolve as I drove home that night. And sometimes it was necessary to distance yourself from people who didn't see your value. The following day, I packed my suitcase with sundresses and sunscreen, which felt like a rebellious act. In the December cold, I printed our boarding passes and confirmed our airport car service. Everything was ready for our Christmas getaway. And that evening, I turned off my phone earlier than usual because I didn't want to answer any last-minute calls from relatives. The morning of December 24th began with clear fort timesteps / cold winter sunlight glinting off of frost-covered lawns as our car service made its way through the quiet streets towards the airport. Either tomorrow would bring understanding or chaos. But either way, I was ready for a new kind of Christmas. Jason sat next to me, scrolling through the resort details on his phone as I looked out the window at the holiday decorations on the houses we passed. Seeing my thoughtful expression, he asked, "Do you have any second thoughts?" I gave the question careful thought before responding. Not about going, but about how they would react if they found out I wasn't actually coming. My phone had not been on since the night before, and I intended to leave it off until we arrived at the airport. The momentary disconnect felt both freeing and unsettling, like taking out a splinter that had been lodged in me for so long that it had become a part of me. The airport was crowded with vacationers, busy parents restraining, excited kids, and couples and single people making deliberate progress towards their gates. After checking our bags and quickly navigating security, we had time to spare before boarding. I turned on my phone in an airport cafe decked out with tinsel and miniature trees. And naturally, the notifications started coming in right away. 6 missed calls from my mother, 4 from Abigail, and 3 text messages from Thomas, asking if I could pick up batteries on the way over. I was scrolling through voicemails with a strange detachment, as if I were reading about someone else's family drama. And the most recent one from my mother chilled me to the bone. "Margot, Where are you? The airport's overactive heating system said, we are awaiting the start of the breakfast on Christmas Eve. Your cinnamon rolls are being requested by the kids. No. I had never agreed to make the cinnamon rolls. I had never consented to the breakfast. Years of compliance were followed by more expectations and more presumptions. As I showed Jason the messages, I whispered, they still don't know. He looked over the increasingly desperate texts, raising his eyebrows. When will you inform them? With my finger hovering over my mother's contact details. I made up my mind, but enough to inform them that I won't be providing babysitting services. I wrote a short message. Childcare will not be available tomorrow during Christmas dinner. Savour your adult-only meal. Margot. Love. Purposefully ambiguous. There was no mention of my location or the fact that I would not be there for any of the celebrations. Just enough to throw off the plan I heard. My mother's call came on my phone a few seconds after I sent the text. On the third try, I answered after letting it go to voicemail twice. Where is Margot, Elizabeth? My mother's voice had the acerbic edge of someone who isn't used to having her hopes dashed. I calmly replied, Good morning, Mom, letting Jason know that this was the call. I got a positive thumbs up from him. Young lady, don't say good morning to me. We need to finalize the schedule for tonight's activities while the kids wait for breakfast. You're not here. Why? I inhaled deeply and focused on the busy airport terminal. Mom, I'm not coming. Neither today nor tomorrow. The ensuing silence lasted for a few seconds before she answered, her voice suddenly unsure. By not coming? What do you mean? You're coming. Of course. Christmas is here. Despite the adrenaline rushing through me, I maintained a level voice as I explained that I had overheard your conversation last week. During your adult-only dinner, you, Abigail, and Thomas decided that I would watch all 5 of the children. The time you all made fun of me for being unmarried and having nothing better to do, there was another awaited silence. Her tone had changed from outrage to appeasement when she spoke again. You misunderstood. Margot, all we were doing was attempting to work out the logistics. Naturally, we also want you to attend the adult dinner. You're being too sensitive. Am I because it fits a pattern and seemed fairly obvious to me? You all schedule my time without asking. Mom, as though it were automatically yours. As though everyone else's life and decisions are more important than mine. She protested less vehemently. That's ridiculous. Now, where are you? Come on over so we can talk about this face to face. I answered, I'm at the airport, observing the start of the boarding procedure for our flight. In half an hour. My flight will depart. Airport. The pitch of her voice increased. Which flight? Where are you heading? Jason and I are on vacation. On Christmas Eve. You all thought I had lost the photographer. You can't be serious. Margot. How about tomorrow's dinner? What about the gifts for the kids? What about all the customs you manage every time? Our group was summoned to the gate by the boarding announcement that reverberated throughout the terminal. Mom. That's the problem. Without anyone asking if I wanted the position, they fell under my purview. I'm going with a different option this year. Once more. Her tone changed to one of barely controlled panic. What about dinner? Though I haven't made anything. I assumed you were taking care of everything as usual. I clarified that the catering would be delivered at 4 tomorrow. Everything has thorough instructions, and is paid for. 5 children's dinners for adults with clear labels. You just need to heat it up and serve it as directed. Catering, she said again, as if the word were unfamiliar. However, a home-cooked meal is not the same as that. The kids will feel so let down. I told her that Christmas cookies and chicken tenders would be fine with the kids. Additionally, you adults won't have to worry about childcare while you savor your beef Wellington and wine pairings. Ultimately, wasn't that the plan? Just without my presence. Jason pointed to the gate as our row was called for boarding. I gathered my carry-on bag and nodded. Mom, I have to leave now. Margot, our flight is boarding. Hold on. Now there was no mistaking. The desperation in her voice. You can't just walk away. Without you. What are we going to do? Between us hung the question, laden with unexpected disclosure. Without me, what were they going to do? Maybe they will figure it out on their own. Honor the work I've always done. Perhaps acknowledge my absence as a result of what they did. Hopefully, I said softly. You'll manage. They'll deliver the food. In the guest room closet. The children's gifts have been wrapped and labeled. I always referred to the binder on the kitchen counter, but none of you ever bothered to look at it. It contains detailed instructions for everything. But, she insisted, it won't be the same. No. I concurred. It won't. I gave my parting message as we arrived at the gate attendant. Mom, have a happy Christmas. Have fun at the adult dinner that you all organized. I'll check my messages after we land. But I'll turn off my phone during the flight. What time will you return? With a hint of impending tears in her voice. She asked. I answered after New Year's. Then, we can speak. I hung up the phone and put my phone in airplane mode before she could reply. I experienced a wide range of complicated emotions as Jason and I found our seats on the aircraft. A deep sense of liberation lies beneath the guilt at upsetting the family and the holiday anxiety about the impending confrontation. As the flight attendant gave the safety briefing, the aircraft taxied down the runway. I let go of the expectations I had been carrying for too long as we took off, climbing through clouds into azure skies. I had at last argued for my own value in the family equation, regardless of what lay ahead when I returned. As soon as the seatbelt sign came off, Jason squeezed my hand. Are you all right? I turned to face him, smiling more authentically than I had in weeks. I'll now wish us a Merry Christmas. I left the snow, the family drama, and years of unreciprocated housing behind as our plane flew south toward sunshine and new customs. Christmas would, for once, be about happiness rather than duty. And maybe after everything was said and done, my family would realize why this stand had always been required. In sharp contrast to the snow-covered surroundings I had left behind, our oceanfront suite's curtains let in golden sunlight as Christmas morning broke. Coffee in hand, I padded out onto the balcony to watch palm trees sway in the breeze, and early morning swimmers brave the calm waves. The serene scene was nothing like what would typically be occurring at my mother's home. At dawn, kids are running downstairs, adults who can't function without coffee, and me planning the well-timed chaos of opening presents and making breakfast. Jason put his arms around my waist and joined me on the balcony. Happy Christmas. Do you regret being here rather than there? I gave the question careful thought. No. Surprisingly. Of course. I miss the good parts. The relief of not having to worry about everyone's happiness today surpasses the children's joy, and the moment when everyone opens the ideal present I found for them. We exchanged the small gifts we had brought, ate a sumptuous room service breakfast, and collected shells while strolling along the shore in the morning. The palm trees at the resort were decked out with red bows and sparkling lights. I was enchanted by this whimsical, tropical Christmas. We were lounging by the pool at exactly noon, enjoying fruity drinks with little umbrellas as garnish. For the first time since our flight had landed the night before, I looked at my phone. Anxiety made my stomach knot. But I made myself go through the barrage of notifications methodically. 42 text messages and 27 missed calls. 13 voicemails. My absence had not gone unnoticed by my family. I began with the first messages, which followed the development of responses as Christmas Eve played out without my presence. My mother's first texts wavered in between guilt trips. The kids are furious and disappointed by the accusations. It's unbelievable that you would leave us in this manner. As expected. Abigail's messages were self-serving. Without your assistance? How am I going to control the twins' behavior during dinner? Thomas's, however, displayed unexpected insight. We really messed up. Didn't we? My mother's voice grew louder in the voicemails, which told a similar tale. She became frantic when she realized that I really wouldn't show up and save the day. The final message was sent at 1:14 to 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Caught her frank and vulnerable admission. I don't know how to do this without you. Margot, I've always relied on you to make Christmas happen. That was the essence of it. My absence left a void that no one was ready to fill because I had become so indispensable to their vacation experience. However, that reliance had cost me my own holiday happiness, a cost I could no longer afford. Abigail started the Christmas Day messages early. from 7 to 1 to 2 a.m. Text that documents the chaos in the family in real time. Mom is crying in the bathroom as the twins quarrel over who gets to open the gift first. This is a catastrophe, and you are to blame. The tone changed by the middle of the morning. Thomas's message was unexpectedly thoughtful. Now I understand. For years, we have taken you for granted. I apologize for my involvement in that. I told the kids that Aunt Margot also needed a vacation. But they still miss you. Wherever you are. Have a Merry Christmas. Though tearful. My mother's voicemail on Christmas morning was less accusatory. At 4 o'clock, the caterers will arrive. I located the binder that contained all of the instructions. How much effort you put into organizing everything was unknown to me. When you can, please give us a call. The Mo. At approximately 1100 a.m. Abigail sent a startling message. This morning, when the twins couldn't find the special chocolate Santa stockings you always make, I had to deal with their meltdown alone. And what do you know, you've always stepped in? So I realized I've never had to deal with their Christmas morning behavior. You're not being treated fairly. I can only see that because of your dramatic departure. I'm still upset that you didn't tell us outright. But I'm beginning to see why. A burden was lifted from my shoulders as I read through the messages. They were starting to get it. It was an uncomfortable but necessary disruption, making them see patterns that had gone unnoticed while I was following them. As I sat down at the phone, Jason noticed my tiny smile. Good news. Progress. I said in response. Thomas genuinely expressed regret, saying, they're upset. But they're also starting to get it. Will you give them a call? I gave a headshake. Not quite yet. They need a little more time to deal with the discomfort, in my opinion. To be honest, I do too. I'm not constantly checking to see if everyone else is happy for the first time in years this Christmas. During the afternoon, we went snorkeling. A pleasant diversion from family dynamics is offered by the vibrant fish and coral formations. I checked my phone once more before heading back to our room to get ready for the special Christmas dinner at the resort's restaurant by the sea. There were new messages, chief among them from my mother. The catering arrived at 4:37 p.m. Everything comes with instructions and is beautifully packaged. I can follow. 2. I cried when I read the note you left. You are correct that we have exploited your kindness. Margot, I'm so sorry. When you're ready, please give us a call. I was surprised that the issue was acknowledged so quickly. Usually, it took a lot of discussion and time for my family to take ownership of hurtful actions. Maybe my absence had made room for introspection that I was never able to do. Abigail posted a picture of the beautifully presented adult dinner at 5:45 p.m. with the message, the kids are actually behaving with their special meal. This is delicious, but doesn't taste as good without you here. My mother texted a picture of the family gathered around the tree with a visible empty space where I would normally sit. And Thomas sent a video of all 5 kids singing a Christmas carol. They had apparently practiced as a surprise for me. The messages went on throughout the evening. You thought of everything, even in your absence. By the time Jason and I got back from our candlelit Christmas dinner, I was emotionally prepared to reply, not with a phone call that might turn into a tearful plea for me to come back, but with a well-written group message that made it obvious how I felt. Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm safe and doing well. My time, my efforts, and my gifts have been taken for granted. I've been treated more like a resource than a person with my own needs and desires. I needed this time away to process how I've been feeling for years, when I overheard you planning to use me as the default babysitter without even asking. This crystallized a pattern that has been going on for too long. I'm glad the catering went well, and that you're making the most of things. But going forward, things need to change. I deserve the same respect and consideration that each of you expects. So, enjoy the rest of your holiday. I love you all. But I needed you to experience Christmas without my constant accommodation to understand its true cost. P.S. Jason says hello. He would have loved to meet you all under different circumstances. I hesitated before adding the last line. See you in the new year. I put my phone on the nightstand, turned off notifications, and decided that any responses could wait until morning. I had allowed myself the freedom to put my own happiness first. And tonight was for enjoying the gift, watching the moonlight on the ocean, and I felt a sense of peace that had been absent from Christmas for years, as we drifted off to sleep to the sound of the waves outside our window. I had taken the first important step towards a more balanced relationship with the people I loved, and that was a Christmas gift worth celebrating. My family's initial reactions indicated they were capable of the growth I hoped for, but only time would tell if this disruption would lead to lasting transformation in our dynamics. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to step aside and create space for change. The long vacation with Jason had turned into an exploration of local culture outside the resort boundaries, with spontaneous day trips to coastal villages and evenings. Sampling regional cuisine at restaurants where tourists rarely ventured. 3 weeks after Christmas, I unlocked the door to my condo and wheeled my suitcase across the threshold into the familiar space that felt different after my time away. The experience had been rejuvenating in ways I hadn't expected, offering not only a reprieve from family responsibilities but also a rediscovery of my own spontaneity and curiosity. The first family get-together after my return was planned for the following Sunday, a birthday party for my nephew Lucas. I went into the event feeling both determined and nervous, uncertain whether the lessons learned from my Christmas absence would result in significant changes or a return to old habits under the strain of in-person interactions. The first greetings were awkward when I showed up at Thomas and Penny's house with a plainly wrapped gift instead of the elaborate party supplies I would normally have brought. The only one who seemed truly at ease was Thomas, who greeted me with a warm smile and sincerity. "It was good to have you back." My mother hugged me too tightly and whispered, "We need to talk," in my ear. Abigail gave me a stiff hello, her expression guarded. During a break in the festivities, my mother cornered me in the kitchen while I was refilling my water glass. The kids were a welcome diversion, bombarding me with excited updates about school adventures and Christmas presents. And I noticed with interest that they were being watched over by their respective parents rather than being pushed in my direction. I steadily met her gaze and said, "That's exactly the problem. Mom, you were all counting on me without asking if I was available. You made plans for my time as if it belonged to you. We're family," she said. "Because we're family. What you did at Christmas was very hurtful. Margot." She started, her voice low to avoid being overheard. Her brow furrowed as she thought about my questions. And after a moment, her shoulders sagged slightly. "I can't remember," she said, adding, "I guess we've gotten used to you always being the one who handles everything." "Yes, but it should go both ways," I explained. "When was the last time someone in this family asked what they could do to help me? When was the last time anyone considered that I might have my own plans or preferences for the holidays?" I asked. She started crying. "I've been thinking about it since Christmas. I leaned on you so much after your father passed away." I said softly, "That's not fair to any of us. It's not fair to me to always be the giver. And it's not fair to you to always be the takers. I want a more balanced relationship. I'm sorry, Margot. I didn't see how much I was asking of you." Her acknowledgement, so different from the defensive response I had expected, caught me off guard. "Thank you for saying that. Mom, I want to do better," she added, wiping away a tear. "I don't want to lose you because I've been selfish. It was easier to keep doing that than to figure out how to stand on my own." We talked for almost half an hour, exploring years of accumulated expectations and unquestioned patterns. And for the first time, I felt like I was being heard when I talked about how lonely it had been to constantly put other people's needs ahead of my own. I also saw my mother as someone who was working through her own issues instead of just making demands on my time. Abigail came up to me later in the afternoon on the back porch, where I had gone for a quiet moment. "That was quite a stunt you pulled at Christmas," she said in a tone that was purposefully light. But her eyes were still serious. "I corrected you. It was a boundary." She sipped her drink in consideration of what I had said. "The twins inquired about you every day." She paused and asked, "Where's Aunt Margot? Why isn't she here?" I was at a loss for words because it didn't seem appropriate to say that we took advantage of her until she'd had enough. But I still laughed. "What did you tell them?" she asked, looking directly at me. "That sometimes adults need vacations, too? And that we should have been more thoughtful about your time." When she fell silent, he realized, we've been using you as a convenient safety valve. It felt like you had abandoned us when we needed you. But then I had to deal with the bedtime tantrums, the Christmas morning meltdowns, and all the little crises you usually handle without anyone noticing. Aunt Margot is the person we turn to when parenting becomes difficult, she said, shaking her head. Not only is that unfair, but it's also bad for the children. Of all my family members, I had expected Abigail to be the most resistant to change. Thank you for saying that, I said sincerely. I love the twins and want to be a part of their lives. They need to see their parents handling challenges, not outsourcing the hard parts. Her insight surprised me. The change to personal interest in my life, instead of what I could do for her, was another minor step forward. We discussed my relationship and her career challenges, engaging as sisters, rather than as service provider and client. I just don't want to be the default solution to every problem. Understood. She nodded. Tell me about this. Jason, is it serious? When our mother mentioned that she needed help reorganizing her garage in the spring, Thomas stepped in and said, perhaps we could all set aside a Saturday to tackle that together if Margot is available. Thomas was my strongest ally during the family's adjustment process, purposefully rerouting conversations during dinner when they veered towards assumptions about my availability. After that, the focus on my decision and the idea of shared responsibility felt revolutionary in our family setting. As the weeks stretched into months, the changes became ingrained in new routines, and family get-togethers ceased being my exclusive responsibility and instead became cooperative endeavors. Instead of starting with, I need you to handle, text messages started with, are you available to help with? My mother began taking community classes in order to establish her own social network. My relationship with Jason thrived in the healthier environment I had established by setting boundaries. Instead of depending solely on her kids for company, he attended a number of family events where he was greeted with genuine interest instead of the acclaim I had feared. His outside viewpoint enabled me to spot when old habits were about to reappear, and his encouragement strengthened my resolve to keep a healthy relationship with my family. By Christmas of the following year, the change was striking. A family meeting in November marked the start of the planning process, during which all adult members were given equal responsibility. Thomas was in charge of the kids' activities while my mother hosted, while I organized the meal and Abigail oversaw the gift exchange. Everyone made a substantial contribution. As we all gathered in my mother's living room on Christmas Eve, with carols playing softly and kids excitedly setting out cookies for Santa, I felt the holiday cheer that had been lacking for years. I was able to enjoy the connections that had always been the real reason we got together, free from the weight of sole responsibility. Jason whispered, best Christmas ever, while we watched the family scene play out, because I'm not exhausted from making it perfect for everyone else. I replied. My mother raised her glass in a toast later that night, as the adults savored a peaceful moment around the tree, and the kids finally fell asleep. To Margot, she said, her eyes understandingly looking into mine, who showed us that loving someone entails more than just accepting their sacrifices. It also entails respecting their boundaries. We appreciate your bravery in demonstrating a better way for us to be family. It had not been a simple journey. Moments of regression, awkward discussions, and the difficult task of setting new expectations had all occurred. However, the outcome made every challenging moment worthwhile. Relationships that nourished rather than depleted, and a family that operated on mutual respect rather than easy exploitation. I realized that sometimes the greatest act of love is standing up for yourself as I looked around at the faces of the people I loved. By doing this, you open the door to relationships based on care for one another rather than unequal obligations. Everyone benefited from the growth created by the empty chair I had left over from the previous Christmas. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. So, keep that in mind if you've ever found yourself giving and getting little in return. It's essential. Your presence, time, and effort are priceless gifts that should be acknowledged and valued. And those who genuinely care about you will rise to the occasion. When loved ones were taking advantage of you, have you ever had to set boundaries? And realize that this was never merely a story as it slowly fades into the background of your thoughts. vanishing into the quiet places where mystery and memory meet. It was a wake-up call, an unadulterated throb of human reality encased in hushed secrets and concealed feelings. Each word is a fragment of a broken world. Each sentence serves as a link between the visible and invisible worlds, between the dark abyss of what is left unsaid and the light of revelation. Stories work their most powerful magic in this liminal space, igniting the deepest recesses of your soul and bringing to life your hidden desires, unspoken fears, and brittle hopes. This is the power of these stories. Like brittle embers, these digital confessions were whispered into the void, where each viewer became the keeper of secrets, and too heavy to bear alone, and anonymity became the mask for truth. Now, that secret, that shuddering echo of someone else's reality, becomes a part of your own shadowed story, blending with your thoughts and igniting your insatiable curiosity, the unquenchable curiosity about what's out there. Which tales are still untold? What secrets lie just beyond your grasp, just waiting for you to solve them? Thus, cling to this sensation, this electric thread of awe and discomfort, because it is what ties us all together in the enormous invisible web of human experience. You can tell the story is finished if your heart is pounding and your thoughts are focused on the what-ifs and the may. Its magic and labor have become ingrained in your very being. So keep this in mind before you leave this realm. Every story you come across here is a subliminal call to delve deeper. Pay closer attention, and accept both the light and the dark. And if you found yourself lost or even a little changed, then maintain the flame to honor this connection. If this video resonated with you, please subscribe to join the community of seekers who ring the bell and seek the hidden truths. When the next confession, shadow, or revelation emerges from the depths, be the first to welcome it. Because we don't just tell stories here. Some of us end up becoming conduits for the forgotten, the unsaid, and the hidden. And now you are a part of this holy rite. Dear listener, keep your heart open, your senses keen, and never give up on the whispers in the silence until the next story finds you in the still hours. A dot. Thank you for viewing. Be careful. I wish you luck. Asterisk. Maybe you have some new questions now that you've heard the story today. Or perhaps some old memories have been evoked. We are all connected by the new stories that are created on Reddit every day by new experiences and moments. Everybody has a different life path, and we all attempt to comprehend the world in our own way. Moments like these serve as a reminder that we are all human, occasionally joyful, occasionally depressed, and constantly learning something new. Please feel free to tell your friends about this story if you liked it. We always value your opinions and suggestions because they inspire us to produce even better content. Understanding each story's distinct perspective is our aim. Make our content relatable and diverse by incorporating everyone's viewpoints. We learn from stories like these that everyone's journey through life is unique. We also gain new knowledge from hearing other people's stories. You can also tell us your own tales. We also value the experiences you have. Please share your thoughts if you like this video. Our goal is to consistently produce content that inspires you and provides you with fresh concepts. Your comments are still valued even if you have already watched this video. We can enhance our content and give our audience a fresh viewpoint with each piece of feedback. What we witnessed today was only a small portion of the numerous tales that were shared globally and on Reddit. It serves as a reminder of how we all attempt to make sense of life by talking to one another about our experiences. This video merely served as an illustration of how we attempt to learn about various facets of life and establish connections with others through storytelling. We intend to keep sharing tales like these that foster mutual learning and development. We appreciate your time. And please remember to check back soon for more stories. For more incredible content, kindly like and follow if you haven't already. Your encouragement keeps us going, and we'll work to provide you with more touching and thought-provoking tales. Be careful and continue to be curious until the next time. An asterisk.